Hi everyone, it's Anna here, your macrame artist and teacher, and today I'm bringing you a new wall hanging tutorial. But before I jump into that, I wanted to let you know that for my next video, I want to do another Q&A. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask me, put them down in the comment section for this video. They can be about macrame, obviously, but also the business side of things, this YouTube channel, or if you're curious about my pregnancy or any other, questions, personal or business or whatever, I will be happy to answer whatever you're curious about. And so with that said, we can jump into the macrame tutorial. Actually, not yet. Here's one more note from future Anna, who is editing this video right now. So about midway through the project, I started using my new phone to record all the tutorial. And I was super excited because the footage looked amazing on the phone. However, when I put it into my editing software, it became completely overexposed and blown out, and I've really tried to fix it, but I mean, it just doesn't look great. So here is I'm sorry in advance. When you get to about the middle of this video, you will definitely notice that the footage just looks weird and super exposed. So please bear with me. I did figure out how to shoot on my new phone going forward, so this should not be a problem in future videos. Just wanted to mention that, and now we can really go into the tutorial. So as always, let me do the supplies first. So I will be using this piece of dead wood, as I was told. It's not driftwood since it didn't drift to me in the ocean or a river. I picked it up in the woods, so dead wood. And you might remember this piece from my how to prepare branches like this video, where I couldn't get all of the bark off of it, and it's still on it, but I've decided that I don't mind. I think it does add character to the piece, so I left it on. So it's quite rough on all the parts, but I think for this particular piece that I have in mind, it won't matter. It should be okay. So that's the piece of wood that I will be using. And then for my quartz, I've got 3 different types and colors. First one, starting with these braided cords in the color natural. By the way, all 3 cords are 5 millimeters, so the size is the same. So these ones in the natural color and braided. Then I've got these ones in single twist, and this is the color sand, I believe. And then the last one are these guys, which are 3-ply cords and in the color avocado. Now this is a combo that you've also seen before. It was on that wall hanging that I just really, really loved the combination of those 3 colors. So I will be reusing that today again. For all the cord measurements, head to the description of the video. That's where I will post them. So if you want to follow the tutorial, make sure you check that out. And then I'm also planning to use some beads for this piece. So I've got these 3 prepared, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use all 3 or just, 1 or 2, or I might pull some other into it from my collection. We'll just have to see how it goes. But again, for whatever ones I end up using, I'll put in the number that you need into the description. So those were all the supplies that at this point I think I am going to need. And why I say that is because I don't have like a super clear idea of what exactly this piece will look like. What I do know is that I want to make all kinds of different braids just hanging from the branch. And maybe I can talk a bit more about why I want to do that. I mean, you've noticed that this is super crooked, right? It's definitely not a straight piece of wood. And so with something like this, it's always, when you have this kind of a wave in there, it's always quite difficult to make a piece that's like really connected across. Like if I was making something that had, you know, like these different sections and whatever, it would be quite difficult to make sure that the sections really meet in the middle, because you would have like different starting points at different, you know, heights, and it's just, it would be really complicated. So that's why I'm thinking, if I'm just hanging like braids down like this, I will have a lot more control and kind of flexibility to make it look good on something that's this kind of twisted. I hope that all of that made some sense. So you will have to be patient with me. I think it is quite likely that I might be showing you how I'm doing a braid, and then later on I'll change my mind, switch it up to something else. So really pay close attention to the entire video if you want to recreate this, just to make sure that you really catch all of the things that I'm doing or not doing in the end. And one last thing, I will be using a lot of tutorials myself. So I've looked up macrame braids on YouTube. And so if I am using somebody else's tutorial for the braid, I'll definitely make sure to mention it to you and to put the link to that video into the description as well. That way you can go and visit some other channels as well. Maybe you will discover different artists that you might like. And I just feel like that's always a good practice to make sure to do that. And that being said, this is also the case for the very first braid that I would like to add. The tutorial for it comes from the brand of the cords that I'm using. So Bobini, they also have their own YouTube channel. And just, I think, 2 weeks ago or something, they posted a video for a braid on there. And that's the one that I will be using for that first one. And I'll be using those natural cords, and I'll be hanging it in the lowest point of that branch. So that's where I'm starting in the beginning. So to start, I've got 2 of the cords, and I'll be putting them on with the reverse larks head knot. So instead of going like this over it and then through the loop, you take it to the back, and that's where then you pull it through the loop. So I put the 2 cords up, and before I start the braid, I wanted to point out one important thing, and that is that these 2 cords, so the outer cords, are much, much shorter than the ones in the middle. Because in the braid, these 2 cords, they just hang down like this the entire time. And it's only these 2 cords in the middle that are making a knot and therefore getting shorter. So for the outer cords, I can basically have them at the desired end length of the entire braid right from the beginning. So in the description, you will also see how long these outer cords are from like here to the end, and how long therefore the inner cords are as well. This is just, of course, to save some cord. So if you don't care about saving cord, make sure you cut your cords a lot longer, and then you can just hang them with this being the middle of the 2 cords and then having all of them equal. So let's do the braid now. The braid itself is quite simple. You take the 2 inner cords, you loop them around first the left cord and take them back to the front through this loop, tie them up, and then you do the same thing on the other side. So loop them around that outer cord and then bring them back to the front and tighten. And this is what we are now going to repeat until we reach the desired length. So first one side, loop it around, and then the other. And I think from what I'm seeing, you want to make sure that you're not making it too tight. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that this is just going to be falling back like this. So we want it to stay as straight as possible. So you have to give it the right tension as always. So I've gotten to a pretty good length with this one. I still have some cord here left, but I'm not going to finish the braid now. And actually that will be for all of the braids that I'll be making. I'll kind of leave the ends till the very end. This is just so that I give myself the freedom to see if maybe at the end, once all the braids are on, some of them I might want to make longer, some shorter, I'll decide on maybe like different finishes, etc. So that's why all of that, I'm leaving that to the end. So now I can move on to the second braid, which will be the very classic spiral knot, but I will spice it up with some of those beads. For this braid, I'll be using these sand single twist cords and putting them on this time with the regular lark's head knot. And this time, again, these cords are not equal. It's just that this time it's the inner cords that are a lot shorter than the outer cords. So again, in the description of the video, you will see how long from here to the end of that inner cord and then how long those outer cords should be. To start the spiral knot, I will be taking my left cord, putting it over the two in the middle, and then the right cord wrapping around them, essentially making the first part of a square knot. And then I'll repeat the same thing over and over again. And you can already very clearly see with that third knot how it's twisting the cord around. And once the entire pattern twists one time around like this, so I'm back at kind of, this facing me straight forward, I take one of those beads and I'll put it on the two middle cords. To make that easy, I'll try to twist them a little bit like this so that they are a little bit thinner at the ends, and then put the bead on, also using that twisting motion, and then just pull it through. Great. And now underneath that bead, I'll just keep going with that same one part square knot. And so I'll do the same thing, add the bead every time the pattern is facing me. Spiral braid with the beads is done. Again, at the end, not doing any finishing touches just yet. And now I can move on to the third braid. So this next braid is gonna go right here, and I'll be using that Avocado 3-ply cord. Because it is the 3-ply cord, I made sure to put some tape on the end so that they don't unravel on me. And as you can see, it's gonna be just one cord. The braid is called a snake braid. At least that's what I have seen. It's a braid that I'll be doing for the first time. So again, using a different video tutorial for it myself. There are actually a couple different ones that I've seen. So I just picked one by Roxana, and that's the one that I'll be linking down in the description. So let's get to it. So using the regular lark's head knot, I will attach the cord, and I'll check to make sure that the distance between these two braids is the same as between this one and now the new one. So I actually have to move this a little bit further up here. So to make that knot, we start with the right cord, which we move behind the cord on the left, and then we flip it up like this and create almost like a little X that you can see here. And then with this left cord, we're gonna go over this X that you have here, behind all of these cords, and then back out through this loop. And then you kind of want to push this loop upward so that it's right next to where we attached the cord, or right underneath that, and then tighten. So once again, and we do the same thing then over and over. Creating a little X right here. And then this cord goes over the X and out through the loop. And we first move it up and then tighten. I hope that you can see it here. I know the cord is kind of dark and thin, but maybe you will be able to better see it in Roxana's video. So one more time, creating a little X, going over that X, behind it, and out through the loop. And then you kind of have to work it. So first, I'm kind of pushing this loop upward so that it sits right underneath all the knots we already made. And then I'm pulling this cord out. So it's one of those knots that you kind of want to work to make sure that it has that shape that you want. And then I'll just keep going. For my next braid, which is gonna go over here, I will be using a very similar pattern. So again, this spiral knot, but the braid will be made out of this cord again. And for the beads, I'll be using these ones. So definitely a different color, and I'll also place them in a different pattern. Now, again, because it's the spiral knot, the cords are gonna hang so that the middle cords are much shorter than the outer cords. So make sure to check the video description for those measurements. So I added the cords and did a few of those spiral knots. You can see that it twisted about 3 times. So now it's facing me again. And I tried adding those beads, these ones, but unfortunately it turns out that the hole is just way too small and I can't fit these 2 cords, not even one of the cords through that hole. So I will have to go back to these ones. So the same ones that I used on that one over there. So I put one on, and now I'm going to do 1 spiral knot underneath it, or the basically half of a square knot. And then I'll add another bead right away. And then again, 1 spiral knot underneath, and then another bead. And I'll do this a couple times, maybe like until it again twists around, and then I'll do just the spiral knots again. All right, so as you can see, I've done the beads on here twice using 6 beads each time. Then again, the 3 kind of loops in the middle, 3 spirals, and then just a little spiral at the bottom here. And that is it for this guy for now. You can also see that I've already added my cords for the next braid, which is going to look, I think, quite similar to this snake braid. It's again a new braid for me. This time I'm using a tutorial from Soulful Notions, link in the description. She doesn't give the braid a name, so I don't know what to call it, snake braid number 2. But this time it is from 2 pieces of cord, and let me show you the pattern for this one. So it should be a little bit simpler than that other one, because all you do is wrap around the 2 cords around the other ones, loop them through here, back to the front, tighten them up, and then you just do the same thing from the other side. So looping around the 2 cords, and then from the back, bringing it through the loop to the front. And tightening that again. And then you just repeat this over and over until you reach your desired length. So this one is done. So far, this is definitely my favorite one. And when I started making it, I realized I mystified you. It's not a variation on the snake knot, but actually on this bobbiny braid in the middle. So this one is done for now, and moving on to the last one on this side, I'll start by putting up some of the, the avocado cords, the green ones, and I'll be making a pattern with the berry knot and the beads, but also I'll be adding this other color, the sand color, into it as well. Once again, my inner cords here are much shorter than the outer cords. So to make that first berry knot, we will need to make 3 square knots, simple ones. The only thing you need to pay attention to on that first one is that you are leaving a bit of a gap at the top here. And once we have those 3 square knots done, we will take these 2 middle cords and pull them through that gap that we made at the top. And as you are pulling them, the 3 square knots will start wrapping onto each other, which creates this berry knot look. And now you just need to tie 1 more square knot underneath it so that the berry knot doesn't unravel. And as you're tying it, you can keep pulling on the 2 cords in the middle to make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to make 1 more of these berry knots right underneath. So again, with that first half of the square knot, making sure that there is a gap right here, or you can also pull them through the 2 gaps which are on the side. It doesn't really matter. Once I have the 2 green ones done, I will take a piece of that sand cord. This is the middle of that cord. I'm going to pull it behind all 4 of the green cords. Leave, again, a little bit of a gap right here, and then start making a square knot around all 4 of these cords. So kind of like this. Pull it up a little bit. So that's the one side. Now doing the other. And once done with the 3 square knots, I'll take the middle cords, pull those through this gap here in the middle, and then the outer long cords and pull those through the gaps on the sides. And finishing it up with 1 square knot underneath. Now I'm going to repeat this sand knot 1 more time, exactly the same thing, and then again 2 green ones, 2 sand ones, and so on until it's long enough. All right, I'm done with these ones, so only 2 green and 2 sand is what I'm doing here. And now moving on to the other side to add 2 more braids. For the first one of those, the one right here, I will be using the sand cord again, putting it on with the regular lark's head knot. And the pattern or braid that I will be making is the reverse endless false knot, which you've already seen me do on that project, which I did a couple years ago at this point. Now, before I tighten this lark's head knot, I'm going to pull through this gap another piece of that sand cord, making sure that it's sitting in the middle of the cord, and then we can tighten this up. Okay, and so what we do now is we take the cord that we just added and we cross it behind the cord that's hanging right here. And then through each of these loops, we are going to take one of these cords, loop it around, and pull it to the front. And then the other side. And then we pull on these cords and these ones again, kind of working that knot to make it nice and tight up there. And then we repeat the same thing over and over again. So this one is good for now. And for the last braid, that will be the one which is like the most braid out of all of them. I will be using 2 cords, mixing the natural and the green. And as you can see, I'm holding it kind of together because I'll put them on together like this using the larks head knot, and then I'm going to do a 4-strand braid. All right, so to do that braid, we're starting all the way on the right, putting that natural cord over the green one, then the other green one in the middle over the other white, and then the white from the left over the other white in the middle. And I think this will be really helpful for you to see it in the 2 different colors. And hopefully you will be able to tell which one goes where. So kind of always starting on the right, over 1 cord, then the next cord over the one all the way on the left, and then the 2 cross in the middle with the left cord over the right. So I finished the 4-strand braid. As you can see, for some reason, it's twisting on me like that. Like it doesn't want to stay straight like this. There's just that twist, but I guess I'm okay with that. And actually, I finished the entire piece. And here are all the finishing steps that I did. At the bottoms of all the braids, I've used the gathering knot, and I'll show you how I made one of those. So for this braid right here in the gathering knot, I'll be using this 3-ply avocado cord. So what I'm gonna do is I'll hold the cord to the back with just a little bit hanging out here, but most of it being down here. So hold it to the back like this, then make a little loop, again, holding it all to the back like that, and then I'll start wrapping the cord around all the 4 braided natural cords. And I'm gonna do 4 loops here. Okay, like that. When I'm done with them and I'm kind of at the back again, I'll loop the rest of the cord through this loop that we made here. And then I'm going to pull on the little bit that we left at the top. And I'll keep pulling until I can feel that it is really, really tight. And that's really all there is to it. At this point, I can go ahead and cut both the top and the bottom of that cord. And the gathering knot is done. So I was using all kinds of the different cords that I had to make those gathering knots to kind of make it more interesting again. And so then for all the braided cords, so for all the braids from the braided cords, I simply cut those then at the length that I wanted them to be. Then for the single twist cord, which was the sand colored one, as you can see, I brushed it out. So I'll show you a little bit of that as well. And for the avocado 3-ply cords, I unraveled them. So not brushing them completely, just separating the 3 strands that make up the 3-ply cord. And one last thing, for this braid here that had the sand berry knots, I cut the remaining cords pretty short and I used my hot glue gun to glue them to the back of those berry knots so you can't see anything from the front. And that is it. This braids wall hanging is done. I think this is a really cool one where you can just go so creative and customize it so much by using different colors, changing out where the braids are placed or changing out the braids themselves. And for me, it was just a nice way to try some of the braids that I just don't know how I would incorporate them into some other kind of a wall hanging. So that's why I wanted to do it, and I'm glad I did. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.